President Olan, as interpreted. I will not provide you with a date because it must be as soon as possible. That is one of the requirements for a solution to be found. But at the same time, allow me to underline something. There is a new mindset now. The crisis in Syria has been ongoing for 4 years. 4 years. There are probably more than 300,000 dead. And this is not just relevant to the countries of the region, which are hosting the refugees. It is relevant to Europe and the entire world now with that issue of refugees. And those who believe that we could wait some more, and that, in any case, it was far away, they now realize that we have an influx of refugees. That the terrorists, the risk is everywhere due to Daesh. We, therefore, must act. You also asked me what we were going to do, what more? We will intensify the strikes. We will have some more specific target to make sure that Daesh resources. Their means are cut off, including their command centers. The trucks carrying oil, their training centers where they prepare terror attacks. We will continue and we will intensify our strikes at the heart of the cities which are currently in the hands of Daesh. France will not intervene militarily on the ground. It is for the local forces to do so. We've been supporting them for a number of months. We will continue. To do so. And they will do the job on the ground after our strikes that will enable them to do so. but France will take its responsibilities regarding that support, which is absolutely necessary. President Obama, let me just make a couple of broader comments about the operations against ISIL. As was already indicated, we've taken thousands of strikes, have taken thousands of ISIL fighters. Including top commanders and leaders, off the battlefield. We have squeezed their supply lines. We have empowered and armed local groups that are pushing against them, including, most recently, in Sinjar. We're providing training and assistance to the Iraqi government. As they prepare to retake places like Ramadi that had been overrun. We've seen some success. But the question now is, how can we accelerate it? And in fact, even before the tragedy in Paris, I had gathered together my national security. Forces. It had been a year to review where we had made progress, what worked, what did not. And had put together a plan to accelerate and advance the pressure that we can place on ISIL. And we intend to execute on those plans, but we also think, as François said, that there may be new openness on the part of other coalition members to help resource and provide additional assistance both to the coalition as a whole and to local forces on the ground. With respect to Mr. Assad, I think we've got to let the Vienna process play itself out. It is our best. Opportunity. And so the notion that there would be an immediate date in advance of us getting A broad agreement on that political process and the details I think doesn't make sense. As soon as we have a framework for a political transition potentially. A new constitution, elections. I think it's in that context that we can start looking at MR. Assad choosing not to run and potentially seeing a new Syria emerge. But it's going to be hard. And we should not be under any illusions. Syria has broken down. It began to break down the moment that Mr. Assad started killing indiscriminately his own people. ISIL was able to move into Raqqa in part because of a thorough rejection. On the part of many Syrians of the Assad regime, and a power vacuum emerged. And it is going to be a difficult, long, methodical process to bring back together various factions within Syria to maintain a Syrian state and institutions. And to create the kind of stability that allows people to start coming back in and rebuilding their lives. But it's possible. And the urgency that we've seen even before Paris out of countries like Russia indicate. That they recognize they can't be there too long and ultimately winning military battle successfully. Olivier Knox, Yahoo News. Question, thank you, Mr. President. Speaks French. Mr. President. Could you tell us whether the Russian plane did, in fact, breach Turkish airspace? And given the fury of the Russian response on economic, diplomatic, and rhetorical fronts, how concerned are you that there might also be a military component, if not in Turkey. Then perhaps with expanded action against coalition interests inside Syria. As interpreted. And, Mr. President, regarding the measures announced today when it comes to strengthening the cooperation on military intelligence and all this. Had they been taken a month or weeks ago? Do you think they would have prevented the terror attacks that took place in Paris, or will enable us to prevent some further terror attacks? President Obama, we don't have all the information yet, so I don't want to comment on the specifics. We will be gathering all that information. We expect the Turks to provide information. I'm sure the Russians will have some information. And we'll be able to confirm what happened in part through our own intelligence and our own tracking of that border area. As Francois indicated, my top priority is going to be to ensure that this does not escalate. And hopefully, this is a moment in which all parties can step back. And make a determination as to how their interests are best served. The Russians had several hundred people of their own killed by ISIL. And the flow of foreign fighters out of Russian areas into Syria poses an enormous long-term threat to Russian territory. So there is a potential convergence of interests between the various parties. It requires us working with them to make the kind of strategic shift that's necessary and that frankly, I've talked to Putin about for 5 years now. It requires a recognition that the existing structure cannot gain the legitimacy to stop the war. And until you stop the war, you're going to have a vacuum in which these kinds of terrorist organizations can operate more effectively. Let me say one last thing, because I've tracked the question that you posed. To President Olan about what could or could not have been prevented. All of our intelligence personnel here in the United States, across the Atlantic. Work tirelessly, as I said earlier, to disrupt plots and prevent terrorists' attacks. The vast majority of their successes in disrupting plots are not advertised. You never hear about them. But were it not for the dedication of those intelligence and law enforcement and military professionals, this would be a much more dangerous world. So you have to be careful about speculating about what if and could have and would have in a situation. Like this because it's hard. You have 8 individuals with light weapons, that's a hard thing to track. What is true, though, is that we can do a better job of coordinating between countries. And I've been talking to our European partners for quite some time now about the need for better intelligence. Sharing passenger name records, working to ensure that when people enter into Europe, particularly now that the information across various borders is shared on a timely basis. And you have biometric information and other technologies that can make it more accurate. It doesn't mean it's always going to be 100% foolproof, but we can do better on those fronts. And one of the challenges has been, frankly, in the past several years, that you have different legal traditions. Concerns about privacy and civil liberties, all of which are entirely legitimate. I don't think those can be ignored now. Because that's part of those are part of the values that make us who we are and that we have to adhere to. But I do think that this is a reminder that this is a dangerous world. And rooting out small bands of terrorist groups who maintain good operational security. And are using modern technologies in ways that are hard to track, that's a tough job. And we're all going to have to pool our resources much more effectively together than we have in. The past. And I think when François goes back to Europe, his leadership. The leadership of other presidents and prime ministers around this issue is going to be as important as anything that we do. President Hollande, as interpreted. Allow me to go back to what DACE truly is. It is somehow an organization, a terrorist group occupying a territory in Iraq and Syria, killing. And they want to install rules that dishonor humanity. This is what DACE is doing there. And this is what they are trying to do in other countries, everywhere inaudible stands. And then we have to deal with the number of networks more or less organized in a number of countries that are being used to lead terror attacks, like was the case precisely in Paris. We know that this dreadful plan was prepared in Syria, and then organized in a number of countries. And there are also some accomplices in France. Given that some of the terrorists are French, those who committed these acts of war,